You're listening to the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast, episode 123. And if you've been considering hiring a tutor for your teen, or they already have one, but maybe things aren't changing as much or as quickly as you'd hoped, or you've decided not to get a tutor but want to know what else you could do to support your teen instead, then stay tuned because I have 3 things that will likely determine how effective a tutor will be for your teen, how to select a tutor that's going to produce the best outcomes for your teen, and how to know when it's best to save your money and your teen's time and skip the tutor altogether. I'm Katie Jones, and with over 15 years in education as an award-winning high school teacher, international external examiner, and as a study coach, I've helped thousands of students skyrocket their results and confidence. And this podcast is where I share all my insights, tactics, and tips with you, the parent, so you can help your hardworking teen get happy, smart, and successful in their study, and have you both enjoy the journey along the way. This is the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast. Hey VIPs, I hope you are really well. I am fantastic, except for the fact that my bank account is just over $200 lighter than it could be right now. And I tell you that because I'm going to start this episode with a little story from my week just gone. So last Thursday, my husband and I went for our routine skin checks. For those of you not in Australia, this is just what you do as part of your health checks, as the sun is so good because it is out a lot. At least that's a good thing for someone like me who loves the sunshine. But of course, that can be bad because of the skin cancer risks. Now, everything was okay skin-wise, but one thing that was not so okay with the whole experience was that we ended up spending money on something that we thought was the right and responsible thing to do. But basically, it turns out, or it now seems like, was a bit of a waste of money. So here's what happened. The place that we go to got this advanced new photographic or screening type equipment and technology where you have these digital images taken, and each time you go back, it will retake them and supposedly track any changes year on year and be able to detect any issues. So, of course, I'm like, well, anything that helps detect any issues has got to be a good thing. So I book us both in to get these new types of scans done, thinking I'm being proactive, doing the right thing, etc., etc. So we each go and have these digital scans done, and then we each go into the actual skin doctor. And when I go in, he says, oh, so I see you got the scans done. Yeah, that technology, it's not really there yet. It's not actually good enough to pick up on everything. And really, it's not going to pick up on some of the things that we can manually see or detect. And he says this off the back of spotting a tiny mole on my husband's ear. So he went in before me. He had his appointment before me, which the doctor says didn't even get picked up on the scan. But it's all okay. It's been fully checked. It's all fine. But still, this scan costs just over $100 each. So I'm like, we've just spent over $200 on something that's not that useful or not that great. And I'm thinking that in my head, of course. I'm far too English and polite to actually say that out loud to him. So yes, of course, we pay for it all and we leave without really saying anything. But he'd also said the same thing to my husband. So now I'm kind of annoyed. I'm sure the scan is, of course, better than nothing. Just like a tutor for your teen might be better than no help at all if they need some help. But for us, in our situation, still getting that manual checkup and knowing that right now that is more intricate and reliable, then there was really no need for the digital scan. Doesn't mean that the scan was useless, just means that there was maybe a better option and we didn't really need to, for want of a better word, waste our money. Because I hate wasting money. And of course, I'm sure everybody hates wasting money. I am happy to spend money on something that is worthwhile, but I'm just really not a wasteful person. I'm really careful with not wasting food and money, and I really look after things. And you know that I'm super efficient with my time. I hate wasting time to a fault, to be honest. It can make me a little bit uptight and boring and regimented some of the time, maybe a lot of the time. So I thought I would share my experience around supporting students and tutoring, and I have been a tutor in years gone by, to maybe help you make an informed decision or choice about getting a tutor so that you don't end up wasting any money or your teen's time and effort on something that isn't going to really make that much difference. If getting a tutor isn't a thing that's going to make a difference or will help you know how to choose the best tutor for your teen if it will. Because as you can tell, I've drawn a few similarities here. Those being that you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to support your teen. You're trying to be proactive, just like we were in trying to do the right thing and do whatever we can to do the right things by our health. So sometimes having a tutor can really help. It really can make a difference to a student's subject knowledge, their confidence, their results. But I also know there are plenty of times when I've had students or parents say to me like, yeah, it was okay, but it didn't really make that much difference. Or sometimes, no, it didn't make any difference at all. And to be clear, that could be because the tutor wasn't actually that great, or it might have been that they are excellent at what they do. It just wasn't solving the problem that really needed to be solved or the weakest link. So therefore, the results didn't really change. Because if your teen is struggling with a subject or their study in general, it's kind of easy or tempting to think that getting a tutor is going to be the thing that's going to solve that issue. And it might, or it could, but it's going to be worth considering these 3 things before making a decision and to help you choose the right tutor if that is the way to go. So those 3 things are essentially about knowing your teen's weakest link in terms of their subject knowledge and the application of that knowledge. So number 1, it could be that your teen doesn't really understand the subject content. That could be what they're struggling with. Like they just don't really get simultaneous equations in maths, what they are or how to solve them or what mathematical concepts are involved, what they need to do and why. Or they don't really get what's going on in the novel that they're studying in English, and they don't know what the different language devices or techniques are, or they're struggling to understand how to connect the themes and symbols that are going on behind them. Now, this is all content-based. It's when your teen is just not really understanding what they're learning in class, or they feel like the teacher is just moving too fast and they're feeling behind or lost with what's being covered. Now, if this is the thing that means your teen is struggling, then a subject tutor could definitely help. And to be clear, so could other resources. This is not about having to necessarily spend out money on a tutor. It could be things like YouTube tutorials or textbooks or study guides or anything that helps break down and explain the content in different ways or in a way or at a level that your teen finds more accessible. And if you were to decide to get a tutor in this situation, then you really want someone who's skilled at actually teaching the content, who understands different learning styles, how to break down concepts and then build them back together. Not just someone who is really good at the subject themselves. Now, sometimes that can work. I've definitely seen it work if they have a really good rapport with your teen and they can connect in that way to help them understand things. But ideally, you want both. Someone who knows how to teach the content and has a good rapport, and ideally, bonus tip, has a really good knowledge of the syllabus and what really needs to be covered. And this is the situation that I think most tutoring is geared towards. So if that is the true root issue here, then that could definitely be a good match. But for many students, this is not actually their weakest link. There are another 2 issues that could be stopping your teen from achieving the results that they could with the confidence and efficiency that they and you would like them to have. So here is issue number 2. Maybe your teen is understanding the subject content in class, but they're not fully processing it. When they're in class doing the class tasks or listening to the teacher explain things, they get it. But when they're having to do tasks or exams or assessment or any kind of homework independently, they kind of get a bit lost or they go blank or they just struggle to do whatever it is that they need to with that information. They feel like it made sense when someone else explained it, but they can't really put it across or recall it very well for themselves. This is an indication that they're not actively engaging with or fully processing and not effectively storing that information in their long-term memory. And when I say long-term, I don't mean they have to remember it for the next 10 years, but it does need to be longer than 10 minutes. Now, in this case, they may not need a tutor. They may just need more effective learning, consolidation, and revision techniques. So ideally, the teaching in the classroom should be doing this, but I do know that that's not always the case. So the most basic way I can explain this is that they need to be studying or revising actively rather than passively. So just listening to the teacher or copying notes from a textbook or watching an explainer video, these are all passive. They don't really take anything from your teen in order to process and engage with the content. So to make learning and revision active, they need to transform that information in some way from one format to another. That could be as simple as explaining verbally to someone else the process that they had originally sketched out as a diagram. It could be taking a written novel and drawing it out as a comic strip to show the main events and themes. It could be, instead of working out and solving that simultaneous equation, that they write out the steps like a recipe, what has to be done at each step and why, the decisions or concepts behind it. Now, the best way to know if something is active rather than passive is that there needs to be mental engagement. And that means it's going to feel like a bit of an effort. If something, when it comes to study, feels easy, then it is probably not really doing anything. And your teen either needs to change something about what they're doing, or just use that time to rest and recharge or have some fun. Because studying in a way that feels, I'll say, easy, or in a way that is passive, just lulls us into a false sense of security and a false sense of productivity. Like we're doing something, but really, whatever that is, it's not really doing anything. And if you want a little bit more on that, check out episode 30. I will link to it in the show notes. It's called If It's Not Difficult, It's Not Doing Anything. Now, in this situation, it could be useful to have a tutor to set them some maybe active tasks or go through things with them, or to be the sounding board for their explanations and check their understanding. But it's probably not essential. Most students are going to realize for themselves that they can't complete that diagram, or they can't recall things fully as they try to explain a process. And they can go look up the parts that they're missing and try again till they can do it successful and in different formats. And this brings us to the third issue that could be holding your teen back, or might be making you think that they need a tutor. And that's that they just aren't getting the results that match their knowledge, effort, and ability. That is, they do have the knowledge and understanding of the subject content, but it doesn't fully show in their assignments and essays and exams or other assessments, in the results of those. This has very little to do with them learning and retaining their subject knowledge, and a lot to do with their skills in applying that knowledge effectively. So this includes things like exam technique, being able to answer what the question is really asking and meeting the demands of the mark scheme, and doing it without writing more than they need to, by the way. Or it could include something like sophisticated yet succinct essay writing. Strategies that mean they respond to the essay title in a way that addresses the actual focus of the question and isn't them just generally writing about the topic. This is what I call the two-step topic and focus system, being able to respond at the right level of detail to the actual focus of the question and address those high-level criteria. And it's about writing assignments and assessments and reports without any extra waffle, going off on tangents or hedging their bets, writing extra just in case and ending up going over the word count, and all of those other assessment pitfalls. Your teen being able to apply their hard-learned subject knowledge is a skill. It is rarely explicitly taught in schools because the syllabus is focused mostly on the subject content. But I believe it does need to be taught, and it can most definitely be learned, honed, and I won't say perfected, but I will say that it can become much more automatic, accurate, and efficient. And this is what I really focus on training students in the 10-week grade transformation program. There is some training in the learning of content, like note-taking systems and getting organized and efficient in their study. And there is active revision training and my reverse engineered revision planning system. But the majority is about the skills of applying that knowledge. Exam technique, command words, mark schemes, essay title dissection, and response structure. The 3 steps of analysis. Essentially, getting the best possible marks in a sustainable, efficient way. Now, Could this be taught by a tutor? Yes, if that tutor has worked extensively with exam boards and external assessment. So that might be coursework moderation, external exam marking, being on exam board panels. For example, I've been on writing panels and continue to serve on scrutiny panels where we write and road test exam paper questions and mark schemes. But I'm going to put out a little warning. I'm going to stick my neck out here and say that even if someone is an experienced or excellent teacher, they likely won't have this sort of knowledge or training if they haven't held or worked in those types of positions. And I feel okay about saying that because that was me. I was a successful high school teacher for years before I started working with exam boards. For example, during my teaching, we achieved the school's highest geography GCSE results ever. And this was with mixed ability classes. I never discriminated who could opt for the subject based on ability, unlike another teacher with a subject on the same line as mine, I might add. I won a UK National Teaching Award in my second year of teaching. I got rated as outstanding when we were inspected by Ofsted. And the number of students opting for the subject had more than doubled by my third year. And I do take a decent amount of credit for that because I was the only geography teacher in the school. It wasn't a huge high school. It was only 4th form entry. But I share all of this to make the point that all that happened, and throughout that time, I had no real idea about exam technique, how exams were written and marked, the sometimes subtle distinctions on what gets marks, what doesn't, and why. And it wasn't like I was aware that I was even missing that stuff. Just like it isn't in the syllabus to teach to students, it isn't a required part of your teacher training because to deliver the syllabus, remember, it's all focused on the content. So you get really well trained at how to deliver content. So I only realized that I was missing all of that when I went to my first ever external exam marker training. And that was at the end of my 4th year of teaching. Now I picked up so much from that and have done it pretty much every year since because I found it so valuable and really found it essential to be able to pass on to students. And I always say, and it's important to remind everyone that this is not top secret info. Now, the writing and scrutiny panel member stuff obviously is because we are prepping future real external papers, but everything else, how questions are worded, how marks are allocated and decided, what words like discerning rather than appropriate actually mean on a mark scheme, all of that is allowed to be shared, known, and ideally should be being used by students, in my opinion. So if you're considering a tutor, I really encourage you and your team to first think about, is it, number 1, the knowledge and understanding of the subject content that they need help with? Is it, number 2, the processing, recall, and actual embedding of the subject content that they need to work on? Or is it, number 3, the application of that knowledge? And then you can take the correct or most appropriate action to fix the weakest link. And I'm careful to say weakest link because it probably won't just be one thing. There probably will be a couple of things in action, but if it isn't the weakest link that is being addressed and fixed, then upping or increasing the others is not going to make any difference. Hence why the tutor could be great at teaching the subject content, but if your team can't apply their knowledge and understanding of that content effectively in their assignment or exam, then it's not going to increase their marks or confidence. Though actually, that's not true because here's the kicker. They might feel more confident going into their exam or assignment, but if the result doesn't come out as they hoped, that confidence is then dented. And then they just start to doubt themselves or they feel confused and that frustration builds. So if you are considering a tutor or you already have a tutor for your teen, I hope that this episode helps shed a little bit of light on things and might confirm that it's exactly what your teen needs right now. Or maybe it might save you and your teen some time and money if it isn't. And if you have any questions or any feedback or you'd like to discuss this with me further, then just send an email to support@rocksolidstudy.com and I would really love to hear from you and possibly discuss things further. So I will see you back here next time. And until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care and I'll catch up with you again soon. Bye. If you're ready to have your teen achieve their best possible results with less stress, then I want to invite you to enroll them in the 10-week Grade Transformation Program, where they're going to learn the key concepts, skills, and strategies to catapult their performance in assessments and exams. It's risk-free. They either achieve bigger and better results with a whole lot more confidence in 10 weeks, or we refund you in full. Just head over to www.rocksolidstudy.com/program, and I'll see you there.